Silent screams. Welcome to another terrifying tale that will make you question what's real and what's just a figment of your imagination. Hold tight, because tonight's story is unlike anything you've heard before. It started as any other late-night drive. The kind of drive you take when the world feels too heavy and you just want to be alone with your thoughts. I'd been working late, and the city felt like it was closing in on me. The weight of the day, the noise, the people. It all felt too much. So I decided to take the long way home. A route I hadn't driven in years. Through the winding roads deep in the heart of Canada's forests. The kind of road that's quiet, untouched, where you can clear your mind and get lost in the stillness of nature. But something was wrong, something I couldn't quite place. And it all began the moment I turned onto that forgotten highway. The headlights of my car cut through the dense fog that had settled over the road. It was strange how quickly the mist had rolled in. 1 minute, it was a clear, crisp night, and the next, the world around me was swallowed by this unnatural haze. I could barely make out the outline of the trees, towering and silent on either side, their branches heavy with the fog, reaching out like skeletal hands. I knew this road. It used to be a shortcut to a small town where I grew up. But tonight, it felt different. The silence was oppressive, suffocating, and the mist seemed to distort the familiar landmarks I had once known. I pressed my foot a little harder on the gas pedal, but the fog only thickened. The air felt colder, almost icy, and I could hear my breath growing shallow as a strange unease settled in my chest. As I drove deeper into the forest, I started to notice something odd. There were no other cars, no headlights in the distance, no sounds of tires on the road, just me and the endless trees. The silence was unnerving, like I had stepped into another world, one where the usual rules didn't apply. I tried to shake it off. Just a late-night drive, right? But then I saw something that made my heart skip a beat. In the rearview mirror, I saw headlights, bright, blinding, moving quickly behind me. For a moment, I thought it was another car. But then I realized that it wasn't right. The lights were too bright, too focused, and they seemed to flicker in and out, like the car was driving in and out of reality itself. I glanced nervously at the side mirror. But when I looked back, the lights were gone. The road behind me was empty again. I wasn't sure if I was imagining things or if I had just been too caught up in my thoughts, but the air felt heavier now, as if something was watching me, waiting. I tried to keep my focus on the road ahead, but the feeling of being followed wouldn't go away. It was as though the forest itself was closing in around me. The trees seemed to grow thicker, their twisted branches leaning in toward the road, blocking out the moonlight. The mist curled around the edges of my headlights, dancing like ghostly fingers in the dark. And then, just as I was about to turn onto a familiar bend in the road, the car's headlights illuminated something. Something that shouldn't have been there. A figure. Standing in the middle of the road. I slammed on the brakes, my heart racing in my chest. The figure stood motionless, its back to me, just barely visible in the fog. At first, I thought it was a person, maybe someone who had broken down or was lost in the woods. But then I saw it move. Slowly, deliberately, it turned its head toward my car, and I felt a cold chill run down my spine. Its face. I can't describe it, not exactly, but I can tell you that it wasn't human. Its skin was pale, sickly, stretched too tight over a face that seemed to shift and change with every glance. Its eyes were wide, too wide, hollow and dark, like empty voids staring into my soul. And its mouth was too wide, twisted into a grin that seemed to grow with every second I looked at it. I could hear the faintest sound of breathing, like a soft, rasping whisper that carried on the wind. And then, just like that, it was gone. The figure vanished into the fog as if it had never been there, But I knew it had been real. I didn't wait to find out if it would come back. I threw the car into drive and sped off, my hands shaking as I gripped the wheel. The road seemed to stretch out forever, no end in sight. The fog had thickened even more now, and I could barely see a few feet ahead of me. I kept my foot pressed hard on the accelerator, but the car felt like it was slowing down, as though the forest was pulling me in, holding me back. That's when the whispers started. At first, it was just a soft sound, like the wind rustling through the trees. But then it became clearer. Faint, distant whispers, too soft to understand, but unmistakable. They were coming from all directions, from the trees, from the very earth beneath me. The hairs on the cage